name for the character that he didn't want the other characters to know until his girlfriend calls him by that name, and everybody looks like, really? We had fun with that. It was supposed to be a huge story point disclosure, and it was a secret we weren't to tell, and then it just kind of came out, and nobody went, okay.
And then the other thing was Walt didn't even know his name. I mean, when he realized, what, Archie? He was like, oh.
Little fun moments we have on set in the spare time, which there's never any of.
Yeah, one of the things that somebody asked me a question I was going to ask Rob today, who isn't here, so I can't ask him. In some of the scenes, he doesn't have any lines, but he reacts to things that people say with facial expressions, body language, etc. Is that specifically scripted, or is that simply Rob, being an actor?
I'll say both. There's very rare scenes when Rob doesn't have the majority of the dialogue, and because he's sometimes carrying 10 to 11 pages a day that he's memorizing, and he'll work way ahead of time. He doesn't really get weekends. He doesn't get days off, and he's constantly learning new scenes. And as our scripts got longer, but our shooting schedule stayed the same, he had more and more to do. I'm going to say that a lot of times that those looks are implied in the writing, that they're there. Rob certainly brings a lot more to it, but acting is reacting. It's not just while you're talking, it's while you're listening that it's often more important. And I find some of the best, most poignant moments are the ones where our principal cast are reacting to each other, often without dialogue, to what they both just experienced. Those significant looks often tell a lot more than a page of dialogue could.
Exactly. All right, we're going to take a last question. Yes, sir, you in the brown hat.
Oh, I'm going to give Randy a chance on that, but I just want to say a couple things. First, on A&E, they're a little bit timid about language. In fact, Vic, who, as we know, loves to drop the F-bomb in the books, we were limited to 3 times that word that starts with S, and only 3. And Katie would get mad if another actor improvised and used that word because it would cut her down by 1. So the language restrictions were there very early on just because of the network we were on. Now, things loosened up a little bit as soon as we went to Netflix. In fact, I remember Ferg chasing a naked guy through a truck stop. Hello, Marcus. Say hello to Marcus Red
Marcus
Thunder, our
Red
technical
Thunder.
advisor. So there's always been a little bit of language in Vic, toned down because we're on TV, toned down because we were originally on A&E. And while we were able to expand that a little bit on Netflix, by that time it wasn't our show. There is very little. We do imply sex once in a while. If you'll remember Vic with Lizzie Ambrose, who calls him, using a false burglary report, and then there's a trail of rose petals, and then she comes down in a negligee, and I think we imply that things happened right after we cut away. That actual actress had gotten married right after that season, got pregnant. We didn't write her into any more episodes, although I always said we should, and let Walt just take a couple sidelong glances at her growing belly, wondering what's going on. And so a lot of it's because of how we started on the network we started on. And also when you read the books, it's not heavy in the sex and violence. Well, actually, we're a pretty violent show, and we had even restrictions about how much blood we could use in our crime scenes early on. Those restrictions got lifted as soon as we got to Netflix. But I wouldn't call us a family show. A lot of shows that focus on murder, because as we know, Durant has a higher crime rate than Detroit, per capita. And there are a few episodes where nobody dies, actually. They're few and far between. And then others that we make up for because we kill a whole bunch of people. I have noticed, though, that killing people, no big deal. You hurt an animal, like the horse that was burned, are we in trouble? Even though the animals on the set get treated better than the crew and better than the actors, and we only fake that. My mother was very angry at me for one of the first episodes we did where we burned a barn down because we saw the 2 dead horses laying there. They're fiberglass, covered with skins, very much like any mounted animal.
That's what I do. I make those. I make it real.
And the tongues hanging out their mouths were actually cow tongues that we had bought at the store that morning. We're not allowed to actually hurt an animal on screen. They're much more protected than we are. And so I'm going to say most of our violence we do to people because nobody cares.
Yeah, and Randy gets to do to shoot people.
Yeah, the squib hits.
Yeah, Maggie and I do the squib hits, and Maggie, the blood queen, makes all the blood, and half the time makes the bullet hits. But every meeting for 6 years, we're sitting in the meeting, and I go, "Can we kill him? Let's shoot him." And they go, "No, we'll just reveal he's already dead." "No, let's shoot him on screen. Let's shoot him."
That's only because Randy doesn't like that actor sometimes.
Well, we do have an ability to punish an actor if we don't like him. You put less padding behind the explosive. And on take 2, he's your man. He's really nice. So we never got that far with Peter and 2 RoboCops. We never got him really nice. But, hey, Peter. We always ask to shoot people on a regular basis, and I will say this year, we pretty much got our wish.
Yeah, we've only shot crew members, as Rod proudly brags, twice, I think. During that snow episode, our director of photography and key grip next to them got a little bit of shrapnel from the casing of something in one of the 30-aughts, and so we backed off on our gunfire for about an episode or 2.
It's just, the blank rounds are crimped, and they're brass, and basically what happened was, like, a piece of that brass went through the barrel, and it, like, spun erratically, and, like, impaled 2 people. I mean...
Seriously. The Cameron Duncan, our director of photography, went to the hospital, and they pulled a piece or 2 out and came back to work about an hour later, and the key grip didn't even admit to it until later. And
he was shot right here.
No wonder he didn't admit to it.
Yeah, and but I think it was actually because it was metal that had been anodized and then crimped, and we're working in very cold environments, snow. That while we followed every safety rule about gunfire, because blanks can be just as dangerous as a real live round. But so some little spiraling pieces of the casing had broken off and traveled in other paths, but nothing serious ever.
And then actually, that's the only incident that we had on the whole show. 7 with the pilot, 7 years actually that happened, and now we're, anyway. There you go.
So none of the crew in all of these 7 years got injured seriously. Katie got a stiff neck, and you got the 2 shrapnel wounds.
I do have to say the other reason the key grip didn't admit to getting a piece of casing is it is his job to put up a sheet of Lexan, and we were on the side of a mountain that was about that steep, and they chose not to put one up because they left it at the bottom of the mountain. So when he got shot, saying he got shot was probably a bad idea. But no, this season we did some things to some people that were.
Have to be careful about talking about.
Yeah, I can't tell you what it was, but I did get a call from Ty Arnold at Warner Brothers Safety, who said we called for some direction on what we're allowed to do to torment an actor, and Ty called and he said, in 6 years, you and Chris Howell's our stunt coordinator. He said, you and Chris Howell have been flawless. You've been 100% for 6 years. Do whatever's in your heart is right. Call me and tell me how it goes. But I'm never going to tell you guys how to do it. And I appreciate that you're the only show on Warner Brothers that's ever had a perfect record.
Isn't that amazing?
And when we finished, we were still perfect. And we sure as hell tormented him.
and while Randy talks about tormenting actors, it's actually in good spirited fun. I can't really think of anybody who
Except
was
for Peter Weller.
Well, Even Peter, he's a lot of fun to work with. He's very intense, and he's also always doing double duty, directing as well as acting. So that provides challenges. There's 2 episodes where he acted in that he didn't direct, but every other one, he did 5 episodes over the 6 years, usually around episode 5 that he directed, and in virtually every one of those, the character of Lucian appears as well. So it's a lot of work to direct yourself.
You got to give Brian a lot of credit for actually, because he's a tough director. He's really, and he's a great actor and whatever. But Brian literally manhandled him.
They would only put him with me. They thought that I handled him well, and I consider Peter a good friend, and I know I'll work with him in time in other places, and he works a lot. And but he could be challenging, just the Peterness.
I walked outside one day out of the studios, and there's a major windstorm blowing through there, and there's dust blowing, and it's just you couldn't even see. And there's Peter Weller playing a trumpet in the middle of all this, and he didn't even care. I mean, he couldn't see. He was crying, but he was playing it. I mean, he's an odd character for sure.
I think the trumpet actually was creating the wind.
Maybe so.
I thought maybe Randy was creating the wind.
Yeah, oftentimes we'll have real things going on, whether it's rain falling or heavy wind. It'll be, Randy, turn off those Ritter fans, or at least turn them around and block the wind that's coming. Help us out here with these real elements we're dealing with.
Folks, thank you very much. We're out of time for this one. Thank you for
Really
being
appreciate
here.
you all being here. Thank you. And as you know, any of the crew, we're very available